Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to this another episode of Vuka Nazo, your morning news analysis show. Apologies for my voice and the outside environment. I'm sick with flu at the moment, but none of that really matters because we're cooking with grease. It's a Wednesday morning. Remember, all you need to do if you're watching and tuning in either on Facebook or YouTube is to hit that like button. Yep, that's right, hit that like button right now. And if you're watching on YouTube in particular, do me an even bigger favor by subscribing to the channel. Help me reach my goal of 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Guys, remember we have a website. Find us please at www.bigdaddyliberty.com. With that being said, let's get straight into the news. Right, we begin in KwaZulu-Natal this morning. Indeed, a story that just, I don't even know how to describe it at this point. Words evade me, and that's, a surprise when it comes to me. But, as many as 5,400 schools have been left effectively without food for children. Now, you got to remember, many schools in South Africa, those who are in poorer neighborhoods and who service poorer kids, belong to a program called the National School Nutrition Program. This is a program that effectively provides meals for learners at these schools, learners who invariably, many wouldn't even attend school were it not for that meal. That is, the meal itself becomes quite the incentive for very poor children across this country. So we're talking about the poorest of the poor here, failed in this instance after the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Education effectively have made a big mess, bungled indeed the awarding of a new contract, a new tender. That thing that gets the political elites very excited. Effectively, after it awarded this contract to a single company, changing its previous protocol of various companies and various entities providing the feeding at these schools. Now, the awarding of this single mega tender, if you will, has caused massive issues with feeding at many schools. I mentioned 5,400 having not occurred. That is, those poor kids, many of whom this is the only meal they have in a day, have gone hungry. Begs the question, do the politicians starve as these poor kids do? Do their kids, the politicians' kids of course, starve as these poor kids have? Do the kids of politicians and the political elites go to these poor schools in the first place? Or do they enjoy all the trappings of private school elite education in this country and effectively hunger and poor management and dismal educational outcomes at these schools that are run by the department? It's that irony and that contradiction which makes me insanely angry and indeed saddened to even think that these poor kids are going without basic meals. I want to read this independent piece which basically writes up the story quite well as follows. The Provincial Department of Education changed its new school nutrition tender by introducing a main supplier which would supply the smaller suppliers. The smaller suppliers take the food stock from a distribution point and send it to schools to prepare learners. Now, the unnamed main supplier, I wonder why they're unnamed. Nonetheless, the unnamed main supplier allegedly told the subcontractors to go and collect the foodstuff from their nearest SPAR supermarkets. Now, obviously, this is what has caused the problem with many schools not actually getting this food, and it caused absolute panic. Because you must remember, schools came back in the coastal regions on Wednesday last week after the Easter holidays. Many of these kids coming to school and finding that there's actually no food. Would you be able to study and learn with a hungry stomach? Let me continue reading from this piece, which basically says, now, some of the principals when this crisis happened were forced to divert funds meant for other school needs to go buy food so as to salvage learning. In a damage control exercise, the department issued a memo to principals and school governing bodies and told them to use foodstuff left over from the previous term and ensure that learners got fed. Now, it's quoted as having said the implications are that some schools will receive food items on time and prepare the meals on time. However, most schools will receive their food items late and preparations will start late, which will result in feeding late and even non-feeding, read parts of the memo. Now, it's that memo and indeed the flippant response by fat cat governmental officials that really irks me, that really angers me, because it beggars belief that this is the kind of disrespect and disdain that we show to poor people in this country. And I fully support the call made by ActionSA and indeed the DA also, who are looking into this matter and are demanding that the local MEC of Education actually account on this matter and, in a transparent manner, explain exactly why this has happened, and a lot more than just explain, to actually deal with this matter with urgency, not the sort of flippant, nonchalant type response that we're seeing from government at the moment. This is exactly why I always say hashtag politicians are trash. The very fact that politicians who often claim that they support and stand for the poor and they're the representative of the poor people have no problem starving those poor people. It begs the question, does the MEC for Education in KwaZulu-Natal, a one Mbali Fraser, if you look at this image, do you think she's going without meals? All right, staying in KwaZulu-Natal, where, again, a very rare but welcome win for law enforcement in this country. The National Prosecuting Authority have executed a 165 million rand restraint order against a top KZN businessman, and of course here's where it gets even appalling: 3 former police officers and others. Now let me read quickly from this News 24 piece which wrote the story up, because again there's quite a bit of analysis involved here. On the one hand, it's about law enforcement dealing with criminality in this country and actually enforcing the law. On the other, it's that same law enforcement agencies and the prosecutorial arm actually beginning to clean up within its own ranks within the broader law enforcement community, whether it's the South African Police Service or any other entity. Now, as I said, I'm going to read from this News 24 piece which detailed how now the NPA with its court orders hard at work attempting to take the profits out of crime. This is, of course, according to the ID spokesperson. The court granted the NPA the order in chambers on the 29th of March. The curator was then issued with letters of curatorship by the Master of the High Court, and execution took place on Monday this week. End of quote. Now, the entire case revolves, of course, around the 2010 FIFA World Cup, believe it or not, all the way back then, where effectively there's a criminal case in the KwaZulu High Court in Durban in which an alleged criminal syndicate was effectively defrauding the South African Police Service of more than 47 million rand, of course, for accommodation for various police units during that time. All of those individuals implicated on this are alleged to have been involved in this particular matter, with the police officials, of course, implicated in this having been alleged, I must say, to have effectively assisted certain dodgy deals. Now, I must say this, remember, in this country and in any functional democracy, one is presumed innocent until proven guilty. So these are only allegations that these particular individuals are facing, and they have to face them in a court of law. However, it goes on to basically detail, this article, the extent of the alleged crimes. Now, in the application to court, the NPA alleged that Pandey was the mastermind of the criminal enterprise. By the end of 2009, he managed to get control of the public order policing unit, operational response service, deployment accommodation contracts with the help of Mado and Narain Pashad, said Saboka, that's a spokesperson. The case, of course, is expected to return to court on the 25th of August, and the accused faced fraud, corruption, forgery, bribery, and money laundering charges. Now, end of quote. Now, again, as I said, these individuals face these charges. They're not guilty of anything yet. They haven't been found guilty, but it is very, very welcoming to see the NPA doing its job. And I've always said this, we need to see more, much more of this and not less. And we need to start seeing very high profile individuals being locked up in this country. All right, that's it for this episode of Vuka Nazo. Apologies for being a bit difficult to hear. My voice is pretty much nearly gone at this stage. I'm actually sounding like Rick Ross. But nonetheless, thank you for watching. This is another episode of Vuka Nazo. Remember, you can find us on our website at bigdaddyliberty.com. There, of course, you can also pledge some financial support towards the show. Anything between 50 to 100 Rand. 75 Rand is about the average that we do. If you like the stories that you heard here today and the analysis given, how about you read the stories themselves? The links are in the descriptor of this video. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again tomorrow morning, bright and early, for another episode of Vuka Nazo.